Now you might assume, being that I used a terminal, that I'm pretty anti-Microsoft. I don't like being told how to run an operating system. I don't like software limiting me. I don't like these restrictions, and it's a good reason why I run Linux. However, you might assume that I would run something called free software, a free software distribution. Well, let's look into what a free software distribution is, and then the reasons why I do not technically run a free software distribution. Okay, let's have a look at the screen. So, first of all, what is free software? And there's plenty of videos on this on the internet. There's lots of talk about this. It's become a big thing in computer history. And free software means that it respects users' freedom and the community. Roughly, it means users have the freedom to run, copy, distribute, study, change, and improve the software. Thus, free software is a matter of liberty, not price. To understand the concept, you should think of free as in free speech, not as in free beer. And then if we look a bit further down, you may have paid money to get copies of a free program, or you may have attained copies at no charge. Regardless of how you get your copies, you always have the freedom to copy and change the software, even to sell the copies. So this is from the SFS, who are the Free Software Foundation, who really were in the charge over the last decades to get us in a situation where something like Linux, well, not even Linux, but things like the core utilities, for example, to be able to run a computer system without excessive restrictions, without any restrictions really, is the goal and the principle. And largely they've won this war. They've largely succeeded against proprietary, against big industry taking control of your computer and forcing you to pay either money without having the option of free copies, and or restrictions and lack of knowledge about what software is doing on your computer. So I hope that makes sense. You can look at the link and look at the definition of free software. But so where does that leave how software is governed, therefore? So they created, and this is Richard Stallman, and we will look at Richard Stallman right at the end, but right now we'll look at this. So GPL, and there's been various implementations of GPL, and so software has licensing, right? So licensing such as GPL basically enforce those freedoms. If you apply that license in theory to software, say, so you've got a program and you enforce a GPLv free license, you have to adhere to those freedoms or you're effectively breaking the law. Now, it's more complicated. I'm not a lawyer, but a license means something. That is the license applied to. So you have copyright license, right? That's enforceable. In theory, a GPL license is enforceable. So again, you can look up all the information about GPL, but it's really designed by the SFS, by Richard Stallman, to enforce, by those who apply it to software, to force the company or the user to give those freedoms to the user, and not use it as not have a license that can replace it. All these kinds of things. Again, you can look it up. So again, we're going good here. This sounds fantastic. Surely this is what I want. Well, okay, let's move on. So we kind of now understand in a very basic sense what we're talking about in free software. The Free Software Foundation's definition, the enforcement of this rule on software, and you'll say general computing sounds great, fantastic, and it is. But this is where things start to get a bit messy. So first of all, let's actually look at actual computers, the physical hardware and the software that goes into, say, the BIOS. Okay, so you probably know what a BIOS is. It's really the motherboards starting up the firmware to run, so you can run an operating system. Again, I'm not going to go into this. You can work out literally what a BIOS is. Here you go. There's links here. So type of firmware used to provide runtime services and not operate. Okay, it's what starts up first, let's say, on your system. Okay, so this here, ThinkPad X201. Okay, Now, technically, I can run something called core boot, okay? And the reason I'm bringing this up is even before you get to the operating system, even before you get to programs, computers have firmware BIOSes or UEFI, and they're effectively proprietary. So already that rule has been broken. So what is the answer to that? Well, the obvious answer is we'll just replace it. However, Intel, for example, on this, have been quite canny over the years and have made their software, their firmware, their BIOSes and UEFI proprietary. Okay, and they've made it very difficult to replace. So, for example, one of the big things is called Intel ME, the management engine, which effectively, if you try to replace it, it will not boot your computer. And the argument is this is for security, but whatever the reason, it is very difficult to replace. Core boot does its best to effectively nullify or turn off Windows, Intel ME, sorry, slip of the tongue, Freudian slip, everything goes back to Windows. Intel ME, they effectively use core boot to nullify that. However, there's more than just Intel ME. There are plenty of other stuff, and that's why you've also got Libreboot. Libreboot again tries to have a completely free and open source, but a free BIOS. However, even Libreboot have their issues with this, and they fully admit is that without taking what's called a microcode, which is effectively gates on your CPU, which are proprietary from Intel. This is again for security. Without making your system literally not run, Libreboot effectively allow those proprietary blobs, as they call it, to run on your thing. So again, even before you're getting past the BIOS, you are running into problems. So you've effectively broken that rule. Okay, so this here, X201, technically will run core boot, but it has its problems. Libreboot no longer supports X201's running core boot because of the problems, and their own Libreboot, you cannot run Libreboot as of now on X201s, okay, ThinkPads. There are some ThinkPads, the one before this, X200, X220 and others that can. However, so I can't even run, to begin with, I'm already sabotaged effectively. Okay, and even if I ran Libreboot, technically I would run proprietary. There is a fork of Libreboot by GNU, and there was a big thing about this some years ago, or recent years, where they objected to Libreboot running these proprietary blobs, so they made their own fork. Whatever, I'm not going to get into that, you can look it up. So here's the other thing, okay? So Intel, in their infinite wisdom, had made a whole batch of CPUs before 2019 that had a huge security vulnerability, and the vulnerability was called Spectre and Meltdown. Okay, and one of these things that happened, was Intel effectively had to create a new patch, and the Linux kernel. So Linus Torvalds basically introduced Intel mitigations, again more proprietary stuff in the kernel. So now if we're getting into the kernel side of things, now we're getting into the distribution side of things. So free software, so here we go. Free software includes the Linux GNU operating systems, and they have a list on their website on the SFF which are approved. Okay, now first thing I want to go back to is the Spectre Meltdown and all this, is they run something called the libre kernel, and that takes out all the proprietary blobs of the kernel. Okay, now this causes a number of problems for most people, most normal people running a computer. But one of those things, again, is they will take out the mitigations against Spectre and Meltdown. And again, there's been arguments about this, how serious this is. There's been arguments, so on, I think on Triskill, one of these Libre kernel running OSs, that it's not a problem. Don't worry about it, it's been overblown. Now, you make of that what you will. I don't know, I'm a bit suspicious of that. Effectively, you're running a broken system if you have the Libre kernel. Just put that in perspective. Okay, so these are some of them. You can look at the list, but I'm going to focus on one again. So Parabola, okay? GNU Linux Libre, a distribution based on Arch that prioritizes simple package and system management. So you would assume that this is for me. This is going to be the one I want to use. Forgetting everything else, okay? So maybe I'm going to break the rule and have, you know, a non-core boot, Libreboot laptop like this, but I want to run, say, Parabola. Well, here's the other thing with this. So now let's get into Parabola, okay? So remember, I can't have any proprietary blobs. Now, technically, you can break Parabola and run proprietary software or non-free license software. Again, licensing is a big thing about this. So if I want to do that on this, I'm already breaking the Wi-Fi card as one example, because this Intel Wi-Fi card will only run a proprietary Intel firmware. Okay, it's just how it is. Now, obviously, therefore, I cannot use the Wi-Fi card. And I do use Wi-Fi. I know people like using Ethernet, whatever, but I do use the Wi-Fi. So there it is. So there, I'm already running into the first problem. Let's just put an example. What is one of the biggest things you run? It's the web browser, okay? Let's put in Firefox. Now, if you look down here, effectively, Firefox might come up Firefox, but effectively these are language packages and all these other things. Firefox cannot really be run, and the reason for this is Firefox uses JavaScript. Like most web browsers, the web is full of JavaScript, and JavaScript, it can allow, or JavaScript does have things on the internet where it's basically code obfuscated, so you can inject JavaScript packages without being able to see their source code effectively. Now, Free Software Foundation's attitude is just, well, tough. You can use IceCat or Iceweasel, whatever it's called, and it will implement only free JavaScript. However, the web does not run like that. The web is full of proprietary code, full of JavaScript proprietary code, and some of the most popular websites will effectively break. Look, I'm not going to... This is one thing I will have to split the difference on. You can't use the web without using a modern web browser, without having JavaScript. It's unfortunate, but that is the way it is. We're not living in a computer utopia. The Free Software Foundation might have won, but we're not living in a utopia, okay? So again, you know, and this is the thing, Parabola explain even that they will not allow the AUR. So if you know Arch, you know the AUR is packages made by users and available to download. Now, they will not allow it because that could involve the possibility of breaking the free software principle. Okay, fine. But again, sometimes you just need the AUR. You just do. And, you know, there's a whole thing on it here. So let's also then give perspective. So where are we with this? So I'm running on this system, I'm running Arch Linux with whatever. Now let me put this in perspective. This includes licensing, okay? So there's a program called vrms, which is Virtual Richard Stallman, person I mentioned earlier, and this effectively tells you what packages you're running that are not free software, okay? So if I do vrms, look at the bottom here, non-free packages 139, that's nearly 20%, okay? And this can include BSD, whatever. This could be open source, this could be completely source available, nothing nefarious, but it doesn't matter because of the licensing. All this stuff, okay? And, you know, this doesn't even include 12 ambiguously licensed packages that cannot verify. So there's a lot of stuff on it, like systemd, all this kind of stuff. Again, I'm not anti or pro systemd, but you know, it's just this is how it is. You know, Brave, again, Firefox will not permit the Firefox. You know, this is all stuff that's breaking free software. I just cannot realistically, even with the best intentions, run that situation. So, again, who's Richard Stallman? Well, he is responsible for really the significant part of the Free Software Foundation and, free software activism. Controversial person. I'm not really going to go into controversy. I'm not really that interested in that in this video anyway. So that is why I do not run free software. I will have to, I will split the differences on plenty of things because we're not in a computer utopia. This is just the way it is. So there you go. If you were wondering, now you know. That is why. Would I recommend you running it? Well, if you want to run something like Parabola, that's your prerogative. I just think it's probably going to be more problem than it's worth unless you are, an absolutist on that. I am happy to be if I lived in a utopia, but I don't, so I won't. So there you go. I hope that explains. So we'll leave it there, and you know what to do. You can do the fake YouTube like, you can comment and subscribe, and obviously I want to give thanks to my membership. What is my membership? As you probably see on the screen now, this is people who take a membership on either Patreon or YouTube, gives them early access to my videos, and also has a name on the screen. So Sean, HTX80 Nerd, and Soul947. Thank you guys very much. Hope to see more of you very soon on here. And anyway, I'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next one.